Mr. President, you will not tell me that you think you could beat Sarah Palin.
What I'm saying is I don't think about Sarah Palin.
Okay.
And President Obama might be telling the truth because I guess he pays people like David Axelrod to think about her.
Right. He's not thinking at all about that, but we are, and Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Amy Walter.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics. Twitter.com/Rick Klein, Twitter.com/Amy E. Walter. Amy, it is getaway day, but we are staying right here.
We are, because certain people, as I learned, do not like the tolls in Delaware.
That's right. Stay away.
If you want to get Rick Klein fired up, talk to him about the Delaware toll booth.
Tweet us from the road.
Yes. Let's start with our first Top Line today. Opting out of opt-out. All right, remember the guy, he started this website saying, hey, folks, let's start a riot at the TSA lines. But despite some of the worries, it looks like there have not been any disruptions at major airports thus far. Things are moving along smoothly. Of course, we don't know where Mike Huckabee is flying out of yet, so we may want to adjust for when he takes off.
And I'm, of course, curious. Sarah Palin's getting around somehow. I'd love to know how she's going through security as well.
Jet.
That's right. But this does seem like it hasn't been as much of a story, at least initially, as it might have been. Of course, the best defense against the people that want to opt out is probably their fellow passengers who would trample them if they try to delay their plans. Next up today, war games. The major confrontation going on in the Koreas right now, where some missiles have been fired back and forth between North Korea and South Korea. A big escalation of tensions and a big test for the Obama administration. The White House says the U.S. is standing behind our allies in South Korea, but we're also leaning quite a bit on China. And as we know from that trip just last week, that's not the best of relationships these days.
Well, and look, I'm no ex-military expert, but it seems like when you start doing these military exercises, that's when tensions can start to rise and people make excuses and for why they would make some sort of military action. So it's actually a lot more dangerous than it seems. All right, 63 and counting. That's right, folks. Republicans now have officially picked up 63 seats this cycle. It's probably the final amount. There are 2 seats that are still out there, but those are both leaning toward the Democrats right now. My bet is no one had the number 63 in their office pool. Even you, Mr. Winner of all things, did not have that in there. Also interesting to note, 66 seats that Democrats lost only twice in 100 years has one party lost more than 66.
That's right. This is a big number, and it may grow, but it's unlikely to. 63, I think, is at the high end of anyone's expectations for the year. They had to be very happy with that number. And finally today, Bristol's bronze. If you stayed up late and watched Dancing with the Stars last night, you know what we're talking about. Of course, Bristol Palin didn't win. She didn't actually come in second. She came in third place. Jennifer Gray, our champion, won the Mirror Ball Trophy, which is quite gaudy. Bristol Palin, however, comes in third, surprising for a lot of folks who didn't see a lot of talent in this competition. But Sarah Palin was asked about it last night. She was surprised by it, and she also, when our cameras caught up with her, suggested that President Obama crack open her book. Take a look.
Do you hope that President Obama will read your book, and what do you hope he gets out of it?
Sure. I would hope that he'd read my book, but I wouldn't be betting on it.
No betting, and that was our own Polson Cannith with, I think, his top line debut. They're throwing out a question.
That was. I'm so very glad to see that.
Indeed,
yes.
indeed.
All right.
We begin today with Ana Marie Cox, a longtime friend of Top Line, GQ magazine. Thank you for being here, Ana. And I want to start with Palin versus Obama. Do you believe the president, he doesn't think about Sarah Palin? Is it that easy?
I think that he thinks about her with warm thoughts. I mean, it's a quote I've used before, but the people I talked to at the White House say they would, if all the nominees in 2012, they would max out personally to Sarah Palin's campaign. They really would love to run against her.
But in reality, do we think this is going to happen?
No. Yeah. I mean, her
poll after
poll shows that she's just not a credible candidate.
No, a credible candidate to win the primary? Or do you think, like, first of all, does she run? Does she win the nomination? And then we can talk
These
about
are all, I mean, like, she has proved to be a fairly erratic personality. Let's just say that. So, like, I mean, unless you're privy to her innermost thoughts, and then even if you're privy to those, like, I think it's hard to predict. So she may run. I think the American people have shown, I mean, unless something changes, poll after poll after poll shows that she is not someone they take seriously as a candidate. She's a fascinating character. Yeah. She's someone they're interested in. But then look at, her TV ratings dropped, was it 40% from premiere to the second episode? episode. So even then, she's not that fascinating.
So do you think it's that the media is fascinated with her, but Americans are not, and that's the issue? Okay.
Like,
so
she is good copy, and she is good TV. I am not sure if she's good politics.
It's different, obviously, than that, although it's good for our ratings, I think. We get a balance. I want to ask you about an interview you have in the new GQ magazine with Admiral Mullen, who has become sort of a champion of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the way you portray it is a bit of a surprise that he's playing this out. But what was your takeaway from that interview?
Well, he's a very, very thoughtful man. I mean, what you'd want in someone who's the chief uniformed officer of our military. And he said that he came to his decision about Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or his stance on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, over the years, and that the real turning point for him, however, wasn't all the service that he had done with gays and lesbians, which has said that he has done, but rather the night of the election when Obama won. He thought to himself, I'm going to have to take a position on this. I can't just be a good soldier about it. I can't just obey the rules. I'm going to be called on to say what my position is. And he decided his position is that Don't Ask, Don't Tell is incompatible with honor and dignity. That people who are gay and lesbian who are asked to serve under that rule, under that law, have to, as he says, lie every day they come into work. And that is just simply not something that you want to ask of a person who's serving in the military.
Well, you made a comment at the beginning of that article about, if there's ever a gay pride parade at Fort Bragg, which I really am wondering that day, waiting for that day to come. Right. But clearly there are serious tensions within the military about this. Did you get a sense that he was going to be an advocate within the military for this? Not just a good soldier who will say, here's why I'm doing it, but here's how I'm going to bring my leadership forward.
I think he feels like he's an advocate in how he's framed this, and he says that he's had a lot of conversations with other people in the military who have seen the way that he framed the conversation and recognize it as a different kind of stance than the kinds of arguments that are being put forward before, which had to do with fairness and equal opportunity. And fairness is not something our military is really built on. It's not about being fair. I mean, it's a command structure, but honor and dignity is a very different thing. Next week, actually, the Senate Armed Services Committee will be having hearings on this. He is one of the people that will call to testify. It should be really interesting and exciting because he has been very careful to stay out of the legislative, part of this and stay out of the White House part of it. But his testimony in February surprised people in both of those areas. It'll be interesting to see if he goes further or says anything more, or simply stays at the position he's at, which in and of itself is still a groundbreaking position.
Anna, it's Turkey Day tomorrow, so we like political turkeys. Any nominees, the biggest turkeys of the year? Anyone who leaps to mind as a particularly
Alvin
turkey-ish?
Green, I think, would probably have to, like, he leaps, as they say, to mind. And I think one of the biggest turkeys of the year was mutton, which is the demon sheep ad.
Yes.
And then I actually
Turkey and sheep, I don't know how that works. Is that kosher?
Turducken.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Well done.
Turmutton. It's turmutton.
Turmutton, I like that.
And I guess I'd also have to say, actually, Alan West is, of course, making a name for himself here in the Capitol, already kind of stepping on toes and becoming an object of fun on the left. And then after that, let's see, who are you guys thinking of?
Well, it's really too easy to go after the obvious ones about the Sharon Angle. Well, the Sharon Angles and the folks who did that. But
what about our hometown Adrian Fenty? Worst campaign ever.
Okay, that's the people who had absolutely no excuse, and still lost.
Sharon Angle.
I'm doing the sort of what I'm thankful for. Oh, Castle, that's another good one.
Yeah.
That's
Democratic leadership in the House. How about that for a second here? Now they've lost 63 seats, and I want to ask you before we go. They're going to bring back the same team. It's going to see the same folks at the top. Is this just a nightmare scenario, like playing out in slow motion for Democrats?
I don't know. I think it's something of a good idea. I mean, I've said this before. The leadership, especially in the House for the Democrats, is a legacy leadership in many ways, not just from this past cycle, but from previous cycles. And there's something to be said for having those people there to take the hit if things continue to go downhill. And that way, if things go bad again, then you can bring in fresh leadership. And they're grooming others.
I mean, losing 63 seats, they lost everything they won over 2 cycles.
But then you have the people who are already at the sort of the twilight of their career, the sunset of their career, taking the hit for the people that are going to be next in line.
I see. All right. Well,
that's a good way to think
It's as good a way to frame it as any. As always, Ana Marie Cox, GQ Magazine. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Really
Have a good
appreciate
one.
it.